Ladies and gentlemen, Acropolis number 1 is over. I have no idea who won yet because I'm recording this before we run those final games, but congrats to whoever did win, and let's talk about some new players. Some players who have not played in a tournament yet. We're going to be going back to ECalipso versus Eud64. At this point, I've probably casted 2 or 3 times on this channel, but I feel like it's good to pick a grab, a match that's not at all related to tournament play that we just saw yesterday. Instead, let's go to Germination by BiddyB and see what we have in store for us in this Protoss versus Terran matchup. We've got Eud64 in the top left, and ECalipso rocking some kind of clan tag in the bottom right. Dude, clan tags in Cosmonarchy? You got me. You got me hooked. Let's see what happens. I was looking forward to dropping the debut match of Pasarinho, who has been playing a little bit here, and sometimes he'll show up in the comments section. If he ends up playing some good long matches, or even some entertaining, like smaller matches, but a series of them, I'd be happy to cast him the same way that we've casted people like Krankendow and Leviathan and other people who have shown up partway through the running of Acropolis number 1. But since he is indeed yet another Protoss player, maybe ECalipso can sort of do him justice while we wait for this match to get underway. I'll just remind you guys that this channel does have daily uploads. Every morning at 9 in the morning Eastern Time, you'll get a new casted match of Cosmonarchy, a new RTS vision, a new game built within the engine of Brood War. Yes, indeed, that is the case. It's very ambitious, very crazy. 50 units per race, all the upgrades and researches integrated into the units so that you have this constant identity of how powerful, how strong the units actually are. And of course you can modulate that based on buffs and debuffs from specialist units. And that's actually how you get your army to scale up over time. Fun fact is you take your low tier units and you build a composition out of them with some midder tier units, better tier units, higher tier units, and eventually you can do that, or you can just outright replace your lower tier units if you choose to go that route. A common example actually for Terran is that if you end up opening with mech, and then at tier 2 you transition into captaincies, which is like a tier 2 infantry production structure, your tier 2 bio will obviously replace a lot of the combat roles that the tier 1 bio had. But not entirely. There's still some utility, of course, with Hurricanes, the Firebat replacement. Actually, I think Cyprians are not really answered to by that either. And then, of course, there are some very obvious differences between the Maverick, formerly Marine, and the Madcap. Maybe we'll see those units in play today in this very cast, but I will, of course, do my best to explain all of those differences and all of what those units do as the game continues. We can kind of cool down from the tournament season now with regards to that being done. And so, welcome to a new era, perhaps, where we are going to be seeing new players take to the stage. I'd love to see how deep some of these players end up going as we get closer and closer to whatever the next tournament is. I'm thinking it'll probably end up being in June or even July. We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, ECalipso just rocking the Drakiden only strat right now. The Drakiden is the replacement for the Dragoon. It obviously has a new graphic. It turns, Love to see that. Actually a Strider. And it's been pure Vulture so far, with a Goliath queued up by EUD. Rocking the typical mech stuff. He's gone for the Quarry. I've gone back and forth on how the Quarry works out right now, but the Quarry is just an additional worker production queue. And then at tier 2, you can make the flying worker, the Talos, which is actually of unique import on this map, because this map has a base that you can only harvest from using the flying workers. So, it can be pretty important. ECalipso thinking about dropping his Nexus. Indeed he will. And the Embassy is coming up. So the Embassy, formerly Forge by name and by graphic, it's not at all an upgrade structure, right? Like I mentioned, we have upgrades already fashioned into the units by default, so you don't actually purchase them. Like, for example, Zerg has Burrow by default. Instead, the Embassy is sort of your utilitarian structure. You make your Witness, formerly Observer, from that. You make your Envoy, formerly Shuttle, from that. And you also, of course, make your workers from that, including the advanced worker. It is only allowed to be made from the Embassy. So we could actually see some advanced workers from both players in this match. But Terran will have to wait for tier 2. We'll see if EUD wants to go for that, or even is allowed to go for that at all. Very passive opening game between these two. I think they had played a number of matches. This was just the one that was submitted to me for my consideration to be cast. ECalipso has coined himself, he's now calling himself the Terran Crusher. We'll have to see if he can live up to that as Terrans themselves get better at dealing with the Protoss antics. But he has been pretty strong, I will admit. And I also feel a little bit bad for EUD, because he's a strong player. He's defeated people like Neblime, who's currently, as of recording this, is awaiting challenge in the grand finals of Acropolis #1, and this guy just has his number. So it's kind of wild to think about that, because, you know, surely you would think to yourself, oh, if you can beat Neblime, you can probably beat anybody, but ECalipso apparently is saying differently. And we saw that match against Leviathan earlier today. There was also a couple of Terran versus Terrans that he played against Top Brahmin, and the two that I casted of those, EUD was not able to take the dub. So that's just like, I feel like somehow I've been sent a bunch of entertaining, castable matches, right? And they've all been matches where EUD loses. So let's see if this is a bit different. Let's see if the Terran Crusher can be held at an arm's length and EUD can come up with a strategy to fight him. Like I said earlier, a very passive game. It's quite interesting. You can see here EUD's starting to get rid of some of these more backwards mines. The mines work differently in Cosmonarchy. The lobotomy mines stun you, as their name might imply. Or if they only detonate, then they slow you instead. Either way, though, it's a pretty useful mid-battle force. You just don't want to have, you know, ground units come in here in an arc and then hit the vultures and Goliaths and such, right? So the Witness is spying on his opposition, ECalipso being taken care of to just comfortably build up his army, it looks like, and EUD kind of in the same boat. This is just a bizarre game compared to how normally these two are very aggressive against each other, so interesting that they've both decided to cool it in this particular match. But there was a star pad being made. Yeah, indeed it is here. So the Ant Seal will come out. That is the Terran detector that will destroy this Witness, or help allow the Goliaths to be able to destroy it. We do have more and more Goliaths being made. A stockade now. This will undoubtedly end up... oh, the Witness gets away. That's a little bit of a whiff from EUD. I'm not sure if he was even aware that it was there. You have to imagine if it flies over your base long enough, you probably notice it. So we have a Vestry coming, and now we see that there is going to be a little bit of a transition point here. He has enough for Tier 2. Instead of going for Tier 2, though, he's going to swing into Mass Fulcrum. So he had the ability to go for the Atlas, which would have given him a huge step up in tools available. He's going to use the Anseal to scout around. You'll see that there is indeed an Architect, which is sort of like it only attacks ground units, but it's sort of like an anti-surface, it's sort of artillery-based, right? The Anseal is going to go ahead and confirm that, oh, you've got Gateways making Zealots and an Ardent Authority making Ancestral, or making the Architect. And the importance of that is that when you have a detector in Cosmonarchy, you can actually click to reveal what's in the queue and what the progress bar is. So what I see in this witness mode here, this observer replay mode, is exactly the same thing as what EUD saw by using his detection. Now, when his Anseal inevitably returns, I guess he'll finally clear up that Witness, which has not stabbed into enemy territory. So it feels like this is a handshake from both players to play fairly on the passive side and build up their armies. But I feel like maybe ECalipso is assuming that his opponent is gunning it for, a fast Tier 2 option, right? A Tier 2 timing. And instead, EUD went for a massive intake in the mech units. He's going for Shamans instead of his normal Clerics. So he's going to just deploy these bad boys to heal in a wide area. And we'll see if that's successful or not. He only has the one phalanx, so artillery is not going to be the name of the game, but he does have a couple more coming, making 2 at a pop. And even despite all of this production, he can soon afford Tier 2. It would just require one downtime, like one production cycle downtime, which maybe he doesn't want right now. So as he gets going, the Treasury is constructed. We saw him build this one over here as well. It has the same add-ons as the Ministry, but it can't make workers directly. So that is its central drawback. These Witnesses have been really, really sneaky. The fact that this Anseal hasn't been able to spot one of them. Vultures now being made en masse, have been for a while. They're going to go ahead and plant down the mines for map control and vision. And that will stymie any attempts at attacking into 12 o'clock without first being made aware, telegraphing what your play actually is. We've got more vultures coming down here to cover the wide ramp entrance towards the natural. And this can be a really nice map for defensive play. The Atlas has gone down, by the way. I'm looking around for where it was placed. Am I blind? Okay, it's up here behind the gas. Yeah, so the this map is very good for defensive play because you can get up to your, what would you say? Your third base is pretty easy to grab on the high ground, and then after that, you're within stretching distance of multiple other bases. It's a question of can you hold them. Big mech movement off to the 12 o'clock position does mean that ECalipso has to watch out for his force coming in over here. I'm really surprised we still have not seen an actual sort of response yet. Like, there's still not been a head-on army collision. Got an analog coming. That's an interesting choice. Try to retaliate some of the splash damage back at EUD's army, it looks like. And there is also an Optecton trying its best to get out, but it's too fat. It simply cannot. So, instead it will be scooped up by that envoy. And I suppose it's just in time for another one. The Crucible is empowering all of these production structures, increasing their training rate. So we're actually going to see faster, scale up of the army. And this is pure mech. He's taking the middle of the map. EUD is going to be going for a lot of those mine layings and see what else he can make happen with just the phalanxes. His tier 2 has finished. We'll see how soon he starts to throw down structures that require it. And whether or not he thinks about using his quarries. He has 3 of them. Could be making a lot of taluses for mining that base in his sort of in-base, his air-only in-base. Obviously over here there's a Mason, been waypointed there for a couple of reasons, most notably expansion. Looks like 3 starports coming online here for our Terran player. Wants to amass a potential response to the Optectons before they can already strike. And now, the first proper military conflict of the whole damn game at 11 minutes. No rush 20, eat your heart out. The Vultures forming a great line of defense versus the Zealots, but have the Phalanxes focus down their own too much. There's a huge meaty front line over here. The analog has already fallen. We do have the Architects very, very safe. The Optectons, you can say the same thing. So the artillery is still holding strong here for ECalipso, but he has traded down a lot of Vultures. It looks like he only was able to get rid of a single Phalanx and a couple of Goliaths. So far, we're doing all right here for the Terrans. There are a couple of Goliaths still in the back, but more Vultures do need to be maxed out. Anybody who's played Brood War will already know what I'm saying. In that part, it's fairly similar. The compositions here have a similar weakness, which is Zealot bombing and splash damage from the Phalanxes. However, you can sort of try to deal with that by using units that rend armor. So that could be the Seraph, which we don't see. Okay, I guess maybe this 4th starport will have it, but these are all rotaries, so we're not going to be able to see the Seraph, which used to be called the Science Vessel. It's very different now. Oh no! ECalipso has had to rebuild his Crucible elsewhere. It's also a power field, right? He's going up to the Argosy, so I guess that's fine. He will be enchanting his high-tech structures, but this one is not going to, obviously it won't reach all the way down here. So that feels bad. That's a very expensive loss there. It will be Sundogs for EUD, and we're not going to wait another 11 minutes to see another military clash. Instead, we're going to go straight for it. A couple lobotomy mines here and there are not enough to dissuade ECalipso from trying to take a little bit more of a flanking position. Nice little stun from that one Zealot to guarantee minimal losses. Although, as units come on in, that Optecton very far forward gets peppered a little bit. And a couple of shots here that ECalipso's not paying attention to. That Optecton going down is an expensive loss as well. They don't look like it in this version of the game. We do have a new model already up and running for them in the pre-release, which is basically like a public test realm, if you will, for the next patch. Yeah, the Optecton is a very expensive unit. It's very powerful as well. A couple of Sentinels have been put down here, and it looks like 12 o'clock is starting to be erected. However, our Protoss player is already set up his 4th base at 6, and is thinking about putting a Scribe down in the bottom left. Now, there is a Vulture there to try to intercept that, or deny that play. I'm sure they'll stop looking at each other in friendly ways in just a moment. But aside from that, a couple of stuns there. Even stuns the Witness. Yes, it does stun air units if they're in the vicinity of the explosion. It's a cute little trick that you can try to make use of. And when they're stunned, they don't have cloak anymore. But this flank has not been covered by EUD's mines. Even though he had the one mine there, it doesn't seem like he's considering the possibility of the stab from the left. And of course, this Scribe is sitting here like, oh, I probably shouldn't move any further forward. Unfortunately, an Architect is going to get Doven on here, but that means the Vultures are all out of position, and in fact, he might not even consider for that. Maybe he's just going to charge forward and try to breach the natural. This does open up an opportunity for EUD to attempt a bit of a forward position. I'm a little bit worried about the cutoff here because ECalipso's artillery is all isolated back here. Here come the Sundog stack. There's only 4 of them, but he can still start to make short work of the Uptectons. Unfortunately, he's been focusing down one of them instead of trying to stay at the distance at the extremities. And you can see here, man, all the vultures seem to have fallen. Some of the other units didn't get removed and, disentangled from that middle position. But this force should still be cleaned up. It's just a question of how long is it going to take. Reinforcements coming in, but they're not very powerful ones. It's just the units out of the gateway. The timing not exactly there. So the artillery is isolated over here. Still a force to be reckoned with, but so low from all the splash damage of the phalanxes. We got more zealots streaming on in to finally clean up the middle of the map. We've got a lot of mines laid over here and only 1 or 2 sentinels. Well, we did see the Empyrean as well make its presence known there for just a moment, but it's 7 zealots out of pop, and the 1 Empyrean still rocking over here. This one has done a little bit of damage, so I assume it's the same one, but we don't have very many defenses up here at 12 o'clock, so scrambling, EUD trying to make sure that he keeps unit production up. I feel like his Sundog targeting could have definitely changed the game there, and you can see here, the Sundogs remaining cloaked, and that's because they're not close enough to be revealed. Now, they're going to be revealed as they drag on a little bit closer, but that's the Empyrean down. And now we can maybe see him try to focus down the Uptectons. You can see here, absolutely being worth their weight there. Only 1 Uptecton left. The Zealots are wreaking havoc on the worker line. There's only 70 workers left here for EUD. He can replenish them fairly easily. And there it goes. The Uptecton has fallen. There is another Empyrean here, which does splash damage, so you're going to want to split versus it. And unfortunately, that treasury was never lifted. It would not have been able to be targeted by the Architects or the Zealots if it had been lifted up like that. And you can see the splash damage coming into play. But there's, 4 Sundogs is more than enough to deal with this sort of situation. So there's the splits a little bit late. He doesn't even lose a single one. And here comes another Uptecton as well. But hey, the Sundogs can and will deal with that. The question is, how many Sentinels can you put up here? And are you going to be able to play from a base down? EUD was at even bases for a little bit there. The economy, though, you can see ECalipso floating a decent amount of resources here, and now, unfortunately for him, he does end up getting toasted by those Sundogs, so not really going to be able to do too much with the rest of these Zealots. In fact, they should probably be hunted down here, but ECalipso, if his opponent is busy microing versus that, that's one thing. He did bring some witnesses there, so the cloaking wasn't that big of a deal. And it looks like maybe there was a bit of a run-by over here at the same time, reducing the worker count, unless those were transferred over, which is also possible. I see a couple of dead Zealots over here. Good heads-up play from ECalipso to try to hit it multiple times. Maybe that Envoy had something to do with it. The 1 Vulture just confirming that indeed 6 o'clock has been up and running for a little bit now. You can kind of tell based on the mineral being, this one mineral being depleted. If you click on the mineral fields as well, you can figure it out. Takes about 60 minerals in 1 minute. Is how much you get from a mineral field under normal circumstances. If they're double saturated, it's obviously 120, and triple is only 180, or sorry, 150, because it is half as efficient, the 3rd worker, on average. A second Empyrean is over here. That's going to help deal with the Sundog stack, which I'm not sure what the numbers are actually like right now. Entering into Phalanx mode to tank mode, just going to stay with that. Now here come the Sundogs flanking from the right-hand side, and that is going to deal with one of the Empyreans nice and easy. Now they can sort of refocus onto that Uptecton. Remember, the witnesses are still in play, but it doesn't look like the Uptecton's close enough to use its secondary weapon, and there's only the Empyrean now. I mean, it's not ideal. There's only the 1 Sundog, and you got some Dracodons coming in here. This line of scrimmage that EUD had put together was pretty good, actually, versus this angle. But then, EUD gets attacked from the south and suddenly has to tuck tail and run away. Where's the rest of his units coming out here? It looks like the production cycle just barely not there. Does need to deal with this Empyrean as well. And he's only stemming the bleeding, and not even really, because he's lost control of his 12 o'clock again. He's got a lot of Vespene in the tank. Could have been making, I don't know, Seraphs, Azazels. Definitely could have been making some of the more gas-expensive bio units. Could have even been going for Cataphracts for that sustained damage, and they're a little bit more mobile than the more entrenched positions. Some of his Vultures are heading on down here with a nice little single Phalanx to raid this. Brood War-esque, actually. A second Phalanx going to join it to deal with this 6 o'clock base. So if he can stabilize at his 3rd and not lose it to all of the Empyreans and Dracodons that have been the composition du jour now for a little bit. Tecton's coming in as well. This push looks really deadly. He does pick one Empyrean, but he's lost all of his Sundogs. EUD needs to hold the space, otherwise this counterattack is not going to be able to do too much. I mean, there isn't that much over here, except for the one Empyrean, and none of these units shoot up. So I feel like that is going to be it. EUD not able to make the counterattack happen. And you know what? For a game that lasted over 50% of it without any army engagements, that last section was pretty exciting, back and forth. ECalipso had a surprising change of heart where he kind of moved away from the Ardent Authority units and moved away even from the Uptectons to some degree, reduced his focus on those so that he could get the Argosy up and build Empyreans. A very valid and useful situation to be in there. I feel like EUD could have had a little bit of a better opportunity if he had been trying to drop that tech, or at the very least try to scout what he was going to be up against. Sundogs are pretty good versus high armor targets. They're kind of envisioned as sort of like armor snipers, if you will. Like they try to dive in and snipe out high armor stuff, but they, overkill the lower armored stuff, and as a result, they're not as useful for that. And they are fairly expensive to produce and also fairly expensive to access. But I do think that he would have benefited from having Azazels for defensive matrix, Seraphs to rend the armor, so his Goliaths and such could have been doing better jobs. He actually did take his foot off the pedal for Goliaths so that he could just pump out Vultures, which were very useful versus the ground. But at some point, when your enemies transition in their tech, you got to find the transition to back it up. And he was sort of assuming his composition didn't need to change, despite the presence of that Argosy. So ECalipso pulling off another trick. Pretty cool stuff. Lots of floated money in this game, so I could tell it was chaotic, but that's all right, man. I'm sure we'll be seeing even better things from them very soon. So as I take a sip of my coffee, I'll remind you that you can send money to us via coffee. It's in the bottom right. And otherwise, stay tuned for more videos every damn day. And hop in our Discord server where we will plan additional tournaments and additional events. GG's.